Any second now, we will be live with the people here watching us tonight. For everyone joining in, I want to say thank you so much for joining us tonight. I am super excited because we have another episode of the Book Brew where we talk books while enjoying some brew. I'm also excited because we have a very special guest being Bryan Wilson, who is the author of the Power of the Stars series, with me reading The Forsaken Planet so far, which I deeply enjoyed. And I wrote an entire review on it as well on my blog that you can go check out later after sticking with us for a little bit. But Bryan, how are you doing tonight? Thank you so much for being here. I think I saw a little bit ago that it was like snowing pretty bad where you are. So hopefully you're not too cold up where you are
Yeah.
today.
Yeah, no, I'm good. First, thanks for having me. And yeah, no, everything's good. A little hey, what's up, Nick? A little tired. We one of our little ones had the stomach bug a couple nights ago, so none of us slept. And then
Oh,
of course almost a foot of snow dropped in today, so it was clean up
ooh,
all day today. But no, it's all good. Everything's good. I'm glad to be here.
a foot of snow?
It wasn't about that much. It was about 8 inches. But it
Yeah,
was
I
all
don't even know
wet and
what
heavy. It was
snow
only
is.
a bit below freezing, so it was not the fun kind to clean up.
So I think it's a good time to start drinking some beer, right? I mean, that's going to warm you up a little bit.
Oh, I've been waiting for this all day. Absolutely.
Yeah, I got four in front of me. I have one that's kind of interesting. I'm going to save for a little bit, but I'm going to go to one that I've already had here in the channel before. And really, I do this because I buy a six pack because I can't find a spot to where I can just buy six individual beers. Like there used to be a spot called ABC Liquor where I can actually individually choose like a six pack of individual beers and make your own selection. But for whatever reason, they stopped doing that, which I was super sad because there's so many unique beers at this place. It's all super craft and cool looking. So I bought all these six packs, and a six pack can last a while sometimes when you don't drink it every single day.
Yeah, well, that's pretty cool. I've never even heard of a place where you can pick your own six pack like that, all different beers. So
Even my grocery
awesome.
store did it for a little bit, where like you get a little carton and you pick whatever you want, single selections. They weren't cold, but put it in the fridge and you're good. But
Nice,
still,
nice.
it's sad. But for my first one, I have a Funky Buddha lager, and it's supposed to be putting me in a vibin' groovable situation. So
Nice. That's a lager. That looks like it should be an IPA or something.
I know, but it's a pretty big brand, Funky Buddha. I've heard of
Nice.
them a lot before, grabbing this one right here. But what about you, man? What you got?
Well, I was hoping to get the snowstorm kind of held me up on getting a bunch of fancy ones, so I had to go with what's in my fridge. Nothing great. But the first one, what I saw you have last week, good old fashioned Yingling.
Yingling. There we go. I'm a
So
fan of the Yingling.
yeah, I'm a big fan of Yingling. So I was glad I at least had two of those sitting left in my fridge.
I'm gonna open this one up. I know I've had this one before, and I know I'm pretty much a fan of it. But thank you again, Brian, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers, sir.
Cheers, buddy.
Oh yeah, that's good. Puts me in a groovy mood, man. Groovable lager.
Perfect.
So at first, I just wanted to say that I really appreciate you reaching out to me so long ago, where we were first having interactions together, and you actually sending out your book to me, The Forsaken Planet here, which has a fantastic looking cover, by the way. But word on the grapevine is that you have a second book coming out. It's
I
not
do.
really a grapevine because we announced it not too long ago, but I'm super excited for that book, The Son of the Prophets, right? And
Yes.
I absolutely love that cover. It looks super ominous, super cool, and just makes you question what the heck is that place sitting there on the cover. So,
It's yeah, I'm very proud of that cover, and yeah, that's a it's a big scene, it's a big location. It's kind of the whole second book revolves heavily around that sequence. So I think it's gonna
ooh,
work perfect.
no, I am excited. When I came into this, the Forsaken Planet, obviously you can tell that this is pretty Earth-like down here at the bottom, but
Hmm.
I still was not too sure exactly what the Forsaken Planet was. What obviously you get some sci-fi vibes looking at this, right? Would you describe this being a sci-fi only like story? I know you mentioned it a few times where you like to describe it as being like a science fantasy, right? In terms of new people coming to your book, it's not just science fiction.
Yeah, I absolutely like the call it science fantasy because there is definitely heavy fantasy elements to it. So yes, I wrote a sci-fi book, but I'm actually, I would say I'm more predominantly a fantasy reader. And So it was definitely something I wanted to throw into my story. And Speaking of the cover, it was actually, you see the colors added here. I don't know how well this worked, but this was kind of customized. This was a pre-made cover that I bought, but I had them customize it with these colors down here just to kind
Oh,
of give that little bit and they represent, they kind of are a metaphor for events and powers that happen in the story. But I Yeah, I wanted to kind of get on the cover a little bit of a fantasy feel, so that's how I did for that. But
no,
yeah,
I love it. I think science fantasy is a great spectrum because I'm a huge sci-fi fan. What I found interesting coming into this whole booktube community is that a lot of people separate science fiction and fantasy like super heavily. I know, like you
yeah,
talked to Beard of Darkness not too long ago, where he was talking about how he just got into reading science fiction. But to me, it's always been like grouped together, in my opinion. It's just like science fiction is just like a subset of fantasy to where it's more tech focused and future big ideas, right? But
yeah, I agree with that.
yeah, if you for fans who like science fantasy, I know Christopher Rocchio, he likes to describe his Sun Eater fantasy or Sun Eater series as a science fantasy series as well. And I can definitely see some similarities there between yours, where you're not in the weeds of like technical details. You're not going into schematics in terms of how certain things function, in terms of like a technical scope of things, right?
Yeah, yeah, I go a little more into that in my second book. I kind of have to, there's a lot of there's more spacecraft involved and stuff like that. But what I enjoy about my series is, everything on these hello everyone. Everything on these worlds outside of Earth in my series, they all revolve around the magic system that is Solera.
Hmm.
So I'm able to incorporate that into the tech, into the weaponry. It basically gets incorporated into all forms of society off of Earth. So and that's how I was able to incorporate really the fantasy aspect of it all. I mean, I'm sure you would agree, having read it, the fight scenes especially,
Oh
they
yeah.
probably read much more fantasy than sci-fi, which is strange considering it's taking place, with this advanced weaponry and technology and all stuff like that. But
Hmm.
it was definitely what I wanted to do. Like I said, I've been predominantly a fantasy reader, but I've always been just kind of enamored with space. I've always been so curious about it, and I definitely wanted, my story to kind of be that space opera, but with a fantasy kick to the whole thing.
I think you're doing a fantastic job doing just that.
Thank you.
And like Caden's saying right here, I love a blend of genres. I agree
Okay.
100%. It's always so fun to see two things kind of just mesh together, especially when it's done uh, great as well.
Yeah,
Going to your book
we
real
always
quick.
see, especially fantasy. You're always seeing these kind of niche genres spawning off of it that kind of go through their trends and popularity. I'm hoping science fantasy, the space opera fantasy type things like that might be one of the next ones down the road.
And
Biasly
genre
hoping.
salad is delicious. I agree. Pack it all in there. I think that's always fun. Would you describe your book as being a first contact story?
Uh, I mean, I suppose yes. It's obviously a first contact. There's basically aliens arrive on the planet, and that's what kicks the whole story off.
Hmm.
But it's definitely not a heavy focus of you don't really, you kind of once. I'm trying to explain this without spoiling it, but you don't really get the majority of Earth's interaction with it all. That's because everything's kind of turned upside down when you learn, yes, they're aliens, but they're human. And
Hmm.
that's the big revelation is there's these other worlds that have basically been running societies on them since the dawn of our time, or at least our recorded time, dating back all
Hmm.
the way to the kind of the, I never give a definitive timeline, but it's to like the Ice Age almost. It was a great war that happened back then, and it kind of launched this stuff that Earth was eventually left behind, and there's a reason for it all, and there's a reason they keep themselves distant. And the big part of that is the magic system I talked about. Their whole worlds revolve around it, and it's why they're more advanced than us. And so it's why they look at Earth as the forsaken planet, because I don't know if that's a spoiler. I don't know if I should be saying that, but
Everyone,
because
close your ears.
you can't use the power source on Earth. Not even
Mm-hmm.
them who know how to use it can use it on Earth. And so that's why it was just kind of, there's other reasons behind why they've kept themselves hidden, but that's a main reason why they've just kind of left Earth to fend for itself.
Going to
Until now.
Solera. Where did
Solera.
that name come from? Because it sounds so cool. Like it just rolls off the tongue, and it fits like the whole space theme with the word solar in there as well.
Yeah, well, so it basically it's pretty simple. It was Solera is the magic system, and it's what I call the power of the stars, the series name. And yeah, the first book kind of goes heavily into how this power is thought to be connected with the stars in each system. And because of that, that's why I called it Solera, Sol for our star. I've had many beta readers and editors be like, "Oh, you can't use Sol because Sol is just Earth star," and so it doesn't make sense that it would be the stars of these other systems where these other planets are. But I also have kind of an explanation for that, where these other planets have kind of been influencing us slowly in behind the scenes, and so much of everything about our culture, our languages, really stems from these other planets. And yes, it's Solana, I think, in the crypto world. I think I have some stock in that when through my little crypto phase a few years ago. But yeah, no, so that's how I explain, Sol can work for not just Earth.
Mm-hmm. I think it rolls off the tongue to me. So I find that really interesting that your beta readers were so in depth with like the actual word Solera, to where maybe I'm just not that versed in being a beta reader to where I'm not pointing out every little thing. Like I did a beta read for Scott and his novella coming out not too long ago. And basically, all I did for him was just go page by page what my thoughts were in terms of, oh, I love this part. Oh, this part right here, I can see this kind of linking back up to here, but maybe something else would be cool right here, but not going into like the actual word. So that's
Yeah, and
awesome.
I think that's more probably the average beta reader is kind of what you did. But I've told my beta readers, I have a couple of them that really nitpick the story, and I appreciate that. I consider myself a perfectionist, so nitpick away at it. Give me, because if you're thinking it, someone else might think it, and so
Mm-hmm.
I might not agree with it, and I might not make the change based off it, but at least it's bring it to the forefront, because when we're writing these stories, eventually it all just becomes, it all just gets a little jumbled in your own head. You're after you write it and you read it so many times, you're able to
Mm-hmm.
perfectly envision it. You lose focus of, other people might not be able to envision it so easily. So
Yeah, that's interesting. So how many beta readers did you have like reading the Forsaken Planet before you pushed it out?
I had like no part in the writing community before I started, my beta process with the Forsaken Planet. So I had no contacts or anything. And I ended up finding basically paid betas. I found some on Fiverr. I found some on Goodreads. I think I might have found one on Facebook. But yeah, I want to say I had 5 beta readers, and then I worked with 2 different editors, and one of them was more, I don't want to say he was like an editor. He was like kind of half developmental editor, but half
Mhm.
just a really in-depth beta read. But not really, and it wasn't in manuscript notes. It was just it was more a beta report at the end, but a really in-depth one. Sorry, I think it was like 8 pages long. So usually they only come in at like 3-4 tops, at least the ones.
Wow, so that's really in depth
Yeah.
feedback there. That's crazy. So now you are a part of the Break-Ins writing group, right? I know we have Caden in here at the moment. We got Josh, of course, as well.
Yep.
So how did that
Nicholas is in it too.
Where's Nicholas at? Oh yeah, Nicholas is in here. He was that here. One of the first ones here. Welcome, sir. How was getting into that group, and how has that group like influenced you in your second book at all?
Well, getting into it's kind of a funny story. I was almost hesitant at first to get into it, and that's just because I didn't know anyone in the group. I kept hearing about them a lot, and actually I watched Rob Lee's interview on Beard of Darkness, and that's when I kind of learned about them. And and so I talked to Sam Paisley, who's in the group. Him and I have been talking for a while, and we're talking like every day. And we were both like, "Who are these guys? Why are all these people that took us months to get in with and to do our work, or they're all getting their work promoted before their books are even out?" And that, believe me, that wasn't a jealousy thing. That was like a teach me your ways, guys type of feeling. But yeah. So when we saw that Beard of Darkness interview, I was talking to Sam, and Sam was like, "I'm reaching out to them." And the next thing I knew, Sam messaged me the next day, and he's like, "Hey, they're having us both in. You're coming with me." And I was hesitant just because I didn't know anyone, and I've the last couple months, I've been deep in the end of book 2, so I was very just kind of strapped for time and very strung out, and I just didn't want to join something where there was a lot of responsibility involved. Of like, okay, if we're gonna join, we gotta beta read everyone's book or read everyone's book, and but it's not like that at all. And so I did join, and I'm so happy I did, because it's a phenomenal group to be a part of. Especially with my second book coming out. There's yes, it's less than a year since I published my first book, but I've done so much since then that my daily life is so normally busy that I've already forgotten so many of the things of self-publishing and what we have to do and the gazillion things that come with it. So I now have this group to fall back on, and we all have each other to fall back on to say, how do I do this again? What do I do? What's the best way to go about this? And yep, classic Sam. That was what happened. But yeah, and it's great. I wish I had a little more time. I'm very close to being done with Sam's book. I only have about 20 more pages. Fantastic, by the way. Highly recommended. The Winds of Change, Elements of Time series.
Oh yeah,
by Sam Paisley. I'm going to get on Andrew Watson's The Fool's Tale will be next. I'm hoping to get the Cadence after that. I do want to get to an ARC for Amber Toro, that she's read my book and reviewed it recently. And so I think she's trying to get out in April. I don't know when it's coming out, but other than that, my focus basically is the Break-ins books. I'm trying to read them as fast as I can, but given I read about a book a month, it's gonna take a while.
No, I am right there with you in terms of trying to read all these break-in books. Like, I have a shelf right here that I'm just like slowly collecting all the break-ins books, and eventually I'm gonna have a whole shelf like dedicated to the break-ins, where I'm gonna move probably these Dune books up a little bit, because now I'm running out of room already. Somehow I just bought this shelf.
Yeah, I think we got about 5 more that are coming out later this year too. So better leave some space there.
I mean, this is a good problem. I am a fan of having more books on the shelf to read here coming soon. So I think we're at a good point now to actually dive into the second tasting, the second beer already, if you can believe that.
Okay.
It's
I
already
only have 2 beers here, remember, but I'll swap them on and off when.
Oh, there we go.
Swapping.
I got this one right here that has a Viking on it. See it right here?
Yes.
And it's called Einstock. Einstock?
Okay, well, yeah, I was going to say that's got to be a
Olgerg.
Yeah, like.
Yeah. Okay. Which I never knew a white ale was a thing until I saw this can.
I'm assuming IPA. Is that what it is, or?
It's not an APA. I don't see that word or that phrase anywhere, or the acronym.
Oh, that's interesting.
Ale brewed with coriander and orange peel. So
sounds good.
And it smells pretty good.
So what's it
taste?
It tastes
pretty good. It's pretty refreshing.
Is it like a shock
It's
top?
very hinty. Yeah, that kind of reminds me of a shock top, actually. Yeah. You hit the nail on the head. It's just a little bit more fruitier, less orangish than a shock top, I think.
Okay.
But I'm a fan of it. So if you see it in your local grocery store, maybe you should check out some Einstock with a cool Viking on it.
Will definitely draw my eye. So I'll keep on the Yinger for now, and I'll switch to the other one after this.
Yingling's good, man. I'm a fan of Yingling. So Forsaken Planet, right? Book number 2 has, again, we already talked about this, but in terms of the cover, I think it looks fantastic. Was it the same cover designer for book number 2, or is it someone new?
Yeah, it was the same cover designer. It's actually funny. I was supposed to get my first proof of the paperback of that was supposed to come today, but ended up
Yeah.
delayed because of the snowstorm we had. I was so excited. I was hoping I'd have it to
Ah.
show here, but it wasn't meant to be. But yeah, no. So same designer. I actually the Forsaken Planet, like I said, it was a pre-made cover. I made the slight alterations made to it, but I actually bought that, I want to say in 2017 or 2018. I went through a heavy editing phase back then. It was my business slowed down a little bit, and so I went hard at self editing. I did a lot of teaching myself
Mm-hmm.
grammar and stuff like that, buying some books, and went hard at it. And thank God I didn't publish it back then, but I was very close to publishing it back then. And that was when I bought the cover. And but then I had my kids and stuff, and you think you have I don't know, how old is yours?
She is about 4 months now, so
Okay, so yeah,
very, very
newborn. So
young.
you know how life kind of just stops a little bit when that happens. But yeah, then I got back when I got back to it eventually about 5 years after that. Debbie, who I work with, it's from the cover collection. She was awesome. It was like touching base again the next day, and we got this out. And then when I knew I wanted to work with her again on my second book, and that one was customized. That one, I was able to actually find that image on Shutterstock, and then the image of the temple, the pyramid, and
Yeah.
that was then she was able to work the rest with the kind of the rainforest setting. And again, we talked, I wanted kind of that green color coursing through it all to kind of give that fantasy vibe. And then I also obviously had it. It was important for me. One thing I wished I did on my first one was show a spaceship or something on it, just to kind of, because I think right now it kind of sits in the middle of people aren't sure exactly what to expect with it. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
spaceship just helps you very much more so recognize, okay, this is going to be kind of a sci-fi space opera type of book.
And I know, like, when I first saw your posts, like, on Twitter forever ago, like that's how I found out about your books in the first place. Like, back when I first started my channel, I was like, dang, I'm looking for it right now. I know I have it in here. I saw a picture of this purple background with this guy holding this green looking sword, and like the storm clouds were descending, and this looks so cool. I know I have it somewhere.
Right
Oh,
here. Well, it's not showing great there. It's what I use for ads I try to run.
yes, that's the photo. That I was like, okay, that is freaking cool. So is that the same artist, or is that someone different there?
No, so this, in all transparency, is actually a AI generated image.
Mm,
So, but I don't, it's not anything I use
yeah.
inside the book. Nothing like that. Nothing's AI inside the book. It's just I actually made this. I'm testing running ads, Facebook ads, and Facebook ads are so hit or miss. I didn't want to dump money into. You can have I could pay an artist to make the ad, make the image, and it can still bomb. Then I'm also spending the money on the ad itself, which bombs. So this was just kind of, I used the software it's my first time ever using AI anything, to kind
There
of
it
test
is.
it out. Yeah.
Found it.
And admittedly, I use it a little bit for marketing purposes. But the image just came out kind of, I was trying for months to make the right image on Canva and on BookBrush and stuff like that. I probably dumped hours and hours, and I just could not get the right image that I wanted. And I made that one in like 15 minutes with an AI software. So, and it's not something I work with. I haven't really touched it since that time that I made those first couple images with it.
Mm.
No one cancel me for using AI, please. Just marketing.
Hey, Chrissy, I remember your cover with the rolling farmland. So the new cover I think looks fantastic, by the way, Chris. So good job on that. But no, oh, that's great. I think I was actually wanting to ask you a little bit about how, like, in terms of you being an indie author coming into this, like what's been your best method or your most successful method in terms of getting this book exposed to people and into people's hands? Has it been Twitter? Has it been Facebook ads? Or just reaching out to booktubers? Like, what's been the best breakthrough for you?
Probably a little bit of all the above, but I definitely my bread and butter has been Bookstagram. That I did
Bookstagram.
not, yeah, I didn't use social media much at all before. I published last June was when I published the Forsaken Planet, and I opened up a social media account on Instagram, on Facebook, and on Twitter or X in April of that year. And so I had like no following when the book first came out, and but Instagram was the only one that I used in my private life. Before, I mean, I used Facebook before, but I hadn't used it in years before doing that. I'd never used Twitter, not even once, before I opened that up. And so Instagram was just kind of where I was most comfortable with. And yeah, that was kind of just where it first took off for me. I actually was able, I can't even really tell you what I just kind of was genuine and posting pictures of my books, kind of talking about my life. And I think kind of on Instagram, that's you can post more text, so you can actually kind of tell a story with your posts and your messages and stuff. And so I think people appreciated that about me. And yeah, I grew a little bit of a following. And then that was where there's a lot of giveaways, a lot of group promos between self-published authors on there, and joining some of those is really where I started to get the Bookstagrammers themselves kind of noticing me. And just like you, I had some reaching out, and your book sounds really interesting. I also reached out to dozens upon dozens myself, and yeah, that was where it started for me, and just kind of reaching out to people, offering, free copies in the hopes of getting an honest review.
Yeah.
A lot of people took me up on that, and luckily a lot of those people, not everyone, but a lot of those people enjoyed the book real well, and and that kind of takes off from there. They started talking about the book, posting about the book, and I start getting DMs from people talking about the book. So I'm able to now just take these DMs, share that stuff, which just makes more people, it's kind of a snowball effect, and that's how it goes. And then eventually I did get on Twitter, and it was around that time when I had those, I had spent months on Twitter and I was getting nowhere. I also was I got turned off of it a couple of times when I've seen some of the arguments that take place. And I don't know if I've just been lucky to not see that on Instagram as much in the Bookstagram community, but I saw a couple on Twitter and I just wasn't a fan of them. And so I stepped away a couple times, but yeah, when I had those images, when I went back, I went back to Twitter for the first time in a little while, and I just threw them up there on my page, and it actually got a ton of reception. That was, I think I didn't even know who you were yet, and you commented on it, and that was when you were like, "Oh, this looks amazing! I'd love to see what this story is." I think I posted some sort of GIF where the person was just like, "Call me" or something like that, and
Oh, you're like, give me your deets or something. I forget. Yeah.
So, but yeah, and then Twitter, eventually I got a little bit better with Twitter, and it grew. And eventually I also got into Discord, which is actually a very good one to have. It's tough to keep track of all the different channels and whatnot. But yeah, I would say Discord is also the Page Turners Discord, where there's a lot of reviewers in that. I would recommend that for any self-published author. It's also just a great community, a lot of friendly people. And yeah, Bearded Darkness has one. We Break-Ins have our own. There's also all the competitions have them. I actually opened up Discord for the first time for the SPS FC 3 competition that I was enrolled in earlier this year.
Again, I think it's awesome that you helped me figure out that there is even a community over on Instagram. I had no idea that Bookstagram was even a thing.
It's just as massive as the Twitter community.
I had no idea. I mean, people are, because in my mind, it was just Instagram's a spot for pictures. I didn't realize people are taking these really cinematic looking pictures of books and talking about it and discussing it in the comments and all that. Then I saw Andrew Watson's photos that look so freaking stellar, to where he makes these books look like gold. But he does a fantastic job. So yeah, because of you, now I have an Instagram account where I'm posting a few photos every now and then. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. When I tried getting into Twitter for whatever reason, I don't know if it was the algorithm, I don't know what it was. Like, I could not get any traction anywhere. And with Instagram, it was completely different. Like, just bookstagrammers right away. It was almost I was able to
Mhm.
connect with them, and also just very friendly people and very generous people. I mean, like I said, I had no following, and I was reaching out to some with my book, and it wasn't even out yet. It had 0 reviews, and I have no background of anything in the writing community. No one knows who the hell I am, and many of them were very generous to take it on. And a lot of them are actually the same people that are on my ARC list and are going to be the first people to read the second book. So I'm excited to see. Hopefully, everyone enjoys that one.
Yeah, Twitter was an interesting journey for me, or X, whatever you call it nowadays.
Yeah.
For me, like when I first made my bibliotheory account, I had 0 followers, not following anybody. I added everyone that I knew, and then all my posts got maybe like 2 views, 2 or 3 views for the longest time. It wasn't for a while until I found out that the BookTube community was much bigger than Daniel Green or Mike's Book Reviews or Petrick. Or like there's so many booktubers out there I had no idea. And so as I became closer with these guys and started collaborating with them, that's when it kind of grew for me. So I don't know if it's just like Elon Musk says, if you're new, you ain't getting no traction unless you have more followers. But how do you get followers if you don't know people? So yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
I can
Booktube, and
see.
that's definitely one that I definitely need to get more involved in. When I first started, I just did blind send outs to a lot of the booktubers, and it was not a smart strategy. I probably should have tried to naturally connect a little bit more like I did on Twitter and Instagram with people. But that's why, very thankful that I met you, because, you were kind of my first dive into the booktube world.
Hey,
So
look at
yeah, and it kind of opened me up to learning more about the booktube world. And that's definitely, a step I'm hoping to make in the future of hopefully my book will start to spread around a little more in that circle.
Yeah, the soda fountain right here. I think he's spot on. There's so many changes going on right now, to where
Yeah.
like maybe a week or so ago, my account was marked as spam after making a post. I posted a picture of a book, and a second later, it's like, all right, you have been marked as a potential spam threat. It's like, what the heck? I'm just posting a picture of a book saying I love books, and then
Well, I remember when I first got on, like I would try, I don't remember what it was. Was I following people, or like wouldn't even let me like comment on certain things because it was like you need to prove that you're not a blah blah blah. I'm like, well, how the hell am I going to prove that until allow me to start interacting on here? Like, what am I supposed to do? So, I mean, eventually that just went away, but yeah, it's not user friendly. Believe me, it was not. I didn't like Twitter even before the whole Elon Musk stuff, and it was not something I wanted to get on, but I am glad I did now, because now that I have integrated into the community, it is an awesome and wonderful community. There's so many people that it's amazing how people are willing to take the time out of their day to help,
Mhm.
other people like us, self-published authors. So it's a beautiful thing in that regard. If you could just focus on the good of it, I think it's definitely
Yes.
worth it for everyone.
I was just kind of like you, but the opposite in terms of I wasn't seeing any drama in the book community for the longest time on Twitter. I even made a post about it saying, what a great community that we have here on X. And then like a minute later, something crazy happens where there's drama being thrown left and right. I was like, I rescind that.
Yeah, I've only been on since April, and I took month breaks of not even going on. And I think I've seen at least like 5 pretty big things that occurred. And one was actually with a author who's a pretty popular author, who was one of the first authors to engage with me on Instagram. So that was another reason I was kind of biased in the argument that was going on. But yeah.
Well, Derek, you got to come over here on the Twitter world. Okay. I know some
We have
people
a
on
couple
there.
break-ins who aren't in Twitter, and we keep saying the same thing.
Yeah,
For better or
wasn't
worse, you gotta get on there.
I think it was Sam who wasn't on it for a while, but now
I was trying to get Sam on it for at least 2 or 3 months, and he finally got on it.
well, I think we are now at a good point to move on to at least my third beer, maybe your second one. We'll see.
Yep.
So the third one I'm going to pick out is one of the biggest cans of beer I've ever seen in my life, and it's this huge Foster's
Foster's.
can right here. What's crazy is that this can is so massive, but it's only like a couple bucks, like $2 for this huge can. And I had this a few calls ago. It was a green version that apparently is the premium Foster's, where this one's just the normal lager. So is there an actual like difference in the taste? I have no idea.
I don't think I've seen a Foster's can actually like in person since I was like 10. I had an uncle who used to drink them all the time.
Like this size or a smaller can?
I think they're all that size. Are they all that
It's
size?
just insane that there's a can this big of beer. That's crazy.
Well, mine is very traditional, but one I'm a fan of. Good old classic Miller Lite.
Oh, Miller Lite.
Yeah. So
And that
I'm not a
was
huge
mine.
beer drinker, so my stuff is all just kind of the watered down stuff in my house. I'm more hard alcohol nowadays.
Now, sometimes like you can see these super awesome looking cans of like IPAs, and they have the coolest art on the can, and then you go to taste it, and it's just like, ooh, I just spent $10 on this can. I'm gonna have to finish it.
Well, that's part of it for me. I can't stand IPAs. Like I just never liked them. I feel like they're like drinking a pine cone. Like it's just, I don't know. I'm just not a fan of them.
It's a pretty big can, man. It's a certified good time. I agree. If I were to finish the entire thing, I think it would be a good time. And then tomorrow I'd wake up, try and figure out what day it is if I finish this entire thing. So go into your story real quick. I know your main character's name is Colton.
Mm-hmm.
So did this name come out of like inspiration from somewhere, or did you just think Colton was a cool name?
So, I wrote that, came up with the name almost 20 years ago, around that time frame. That's when I first started writing the story. So, and I was in my late teens at the time. And so at that time, it was just, I wanted a name that I knew was a regular earthling name, I guess is the way I would phrase it. But it wasn't, I wanted one that would kind of stand out, that wasn't very popular at the time. And then also one that could have an easy nickname to use, which, as you've seen, they call him Colt a lot. His nickname's Colt. Most of his friends, anytime they're referring to him, they're really referring to him as Colt. And so yeah, it was basically as simple as that.
No, that works for me. I was just wondering if there was some like underlying message in terms of Colton or not, but it is a good
I
earthling
wanted
name.
it unique, and I wanted it to just stand out, kind of be a name that if you get into the series and into the characters, it's easy to remember.
Mm-hmm. No, I like it. That sounds good to me. In terms of the story, I know I read on a few spots, maybe even you said it a while ago, in terms of it can be enjoyed by YA readers and adult, science fiction readers as well. And I definitely I feel that as well when reading through the story. Does
Mm-hmm.
that shift at all in terms of the future installments into the series where it becomes like darker, almost like Harry Potter in terms of it starts off kind of light kind of feeling and then it gets darker and darker throughout the series?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the second book definitely has a much more mature tone. It's kind of, it's a little bit of a spoiler, but it's kind of a strategy of mine of these guys are really, they're all 20 years old. So they're really, 20-year-olds in our world are kind of just kids, right? I mean, they're all still living with their parents. They're all just working part-time jobs. Either, a couple of them don't go to college, work a full-time job. Otherwise, they're working part-time jobs, going to college. They don't have the adult responsibilities in their lives yet. So they are still kids. And there's a maturity that comes around that. I've definitely gotten some feedback from readers and stuff that, stuff comes off corny sometimes and immature and that's intentional. I was pretty immature when I was 20 years old. I'll say that. I don't know if I should say, I'll say it proudly, but I'll definitely not going to be a liar. I'll agree to it. So, I wanted the characters to kind of be that way. And you kind of see the events that unfold, how it forces them to mature, how it's very much a chosen one prophecy trope in my story, and how the weight of that and the weight of really the survival of 11 worlds falls on this immature kid's shoulders. That was my point of getting that through the first book. It's very much a battle school book. I was heavily inspired by Ender's Game. So
There we
it's
go.
got, it's got the simulations just like Ender's Game did. And yeah, but I also, a big inspiration for me was my favorite book series. I mean, my favorite miniseries, television series was Band of Brothers ever. I probably watched it like 10 times through. I don't know if you've seen it, but,
Mm-mm.
anyone who has seen it knows the very first episode of Band of Brothers is the training. It is training pre-World War II. It gives you a glimpse of right before they're about to jump out of the planes and paratroop into Normandy, which is intense, by the way. You got to go watch this series after you're done watching this. Trust me, none of you will be disappointed. But then the whole first episode is the years leading up to that, the camaraderie that forms amongst them, how they become farm boys and city boys to these trained soldiers. And that was very much my intent with the first book. Especially, it's a space opera, so you got to believe that these kids are being pulled off of Earth and they're going to become capable with this crazy intense magic system. Not just capable, but skilled with it. And and that's also important for the next book. The next book gets much more action packed. It's much faster paced. So you got to believe that these kids trained enough to be able to survive the events that basically start to unfold around them. And I think I'm going on a tangent here. But yeah, so it does. All of that was kind of my intent in the first book, and now it does start to lead to, without spoiling anything, you saw what happened at the end of the first book. It's things are intense and things are real, much more real than they were at a good chunk of the first book. So it's time to grow up and it's time to bear that responsibility
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, face it and deal with it and fight against it. So I would say it's, I never intended, I didn't write this specifically as a young adult book, but it definitely works for young adults, and it still will work for young adults as it progresses. But I would go as far as to say it's more so an adult book in my mind, especially as the later installments.
Mm-hmm.
The second book is much more what to expect from the rest of my series. The first, as I said, that Band of Brothers, the first episode is kind of that training episode. Then the second episode, the war kicks off, and the rest of the episodes are all much more like the second episode. The first one's kind of like a variant from the rest. I don't know if this is a good strategy as my debut self-published author to do that, but I almost look at my first book as a prequel to what the rest of the series is going to be and what's really going to unfold. My second book is much more, again, what you can expect, I think, as the series goes along from here.
Well, that's fantastic. How many books are you planning on appearing in the Power of the Stars series?
So I have I don't have proper outlines, but I have a good chunk outline. I have enough that I can make the full outline for book 3. I know a good amount of what's going to happen in book 4. I'm hoping to wrap up the story in book 5. But I'm not 100% that I'll be able to do that yet. My goal is to try and make it a 5-book series. Could be 6, it could be 7. That's not mapped out. I would not go past 7. I don't. It's weird I say this. My favorite series of all time is Wheel of Time. 14 books. I think it's 15 if you include the prequel. But I don't really like longer series too much, so I don't want mine to be. And I think that's kind of a trend that's dying out a little bit in our fast-paced world. Everyone wants, here and now to finish things. So I'm definitely aiming for 5. I say to everyone could be as high as 7, but my aim is 5 right now. So that's where I'll try to be.
Yeah, I definitely see trilogies making like a huge resurgence, or not really a resurgence, just a lot of people like trilogies, 3 books and you're done. You completed the entire arc of whatever characters, right? But I know there's a ton of stories out there that have 5 books. Like even Christopher Rocchia's A Sun Here series is going to be a 7-book series as well. So, I mean, if you go to 7 and you get that following, I mean, that's not a bad thing either.
Oh
Absolutely.
yeah, in some of the niche genres, I mean, like military science fiction, there's books in a lot of those series. They got 15 plus of them, and the people love them. They keep coming back for more. So it's it kind of depends a little bit on the genre. Especially those niche ones like that. Like you get a straight military sci-fi book, kind of space opera like book like that. I know they do longer ones a lot, but yeah, so it's definitely not something that's a bad strategy, but I think it all depends also on what you're writing a little bit.
Now, I'm excited for the next iteration here in terms of being, you said, a little bit more fast paced, um, maybe a little bit more darker, more action. I'm excited for that because I tell you what, the beginning of the book, it definitely felt more YA ish. Like you were saying, it's kind of corny in terms of the 20-year-olds joking around and around the fire
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yep.
Then in the end, you're just like, holy cow, there's some crazy crap going on here, and I absolutely love it. So I
Yeah, I would
am.
say the ending of that book is expect that to be the more norm now, moving forward. I think you'll
Oh
see that
man.
definitely too, throughout
Hmm.
the really the course of the second book.
I'm very excited
And
for that.
something I just want to note too, as you have been having read it, something to expect is I always plan for this series to be a multi POV series. I found that I had a tough time working that into the first book, just because I did want to focus on Colton, the main character's
Yeah.
growth, and I did want to focus on the whole battle school, that the camaraderie that forms. Getting, some people may look at my first book and be like, "Man, there's a lot of side characters that maybe don't do too much." There's a reason for that. You're going to see it. Anyone who reads the second book will see it much more. Um, but yeah, they. But anyway, so where Colton was like, I want to say he's 85 to 90% of the POVs in the first book. It Hey Ryan, wish you could have made it with us tonight. But
We'll
yeah,
talk
no,
later, Ryan. Hey, good luck on your car ride, man.
yeah. But yeah, so where he is like 85 to 90% of the first book, I was he's more only like he hovers a little bit below the 60% mark in book two. And it gets, I had to open the story up. There's my world building, as you know, is 11 different worlds. There's this whole
Yeah.
ancient alien mythology lore behind the whole thing. So the story starts to head to different locations at once, to help, I'm so excited to show more of these worlds, these other cultures to people. And so because of that, we get into the heads of a lot more different, lot of friends we made in the first book,
Hmm.
specifically. And so it's definitely more what to expect, in the second. I don't want that to be a shock to anyone who got more so used to Colton in the first book, because it's definitely going to be a more wide scale story and a more, different headspaces throughout.
Well, I commend you on that in writing so many POVs or more POVs in your story. I know it can be a challenge just to wrap your head around one character alone and be able to tell a full arc in a story. I know, like Ryan over here is writing like 11 characters in his first book. I just think that's insane.
Wow,
So,
that's a lot.
but yeah, I like what the soda fountain saying. I also really enjoy the lighter moments where Colton's joking around with his friends when there's crazy chaos going on behind them. I can
Yeah.
always um, love those segments there. But um, that's great. I think we are now at a good spot to move on to the last beer for me. You have your same one, which is completely fine
Yeah.
because yeah, a lot of snow going on there. I know you. Actually, I had a story for Miller Lite actually that I'll tell you here in a second. Ter This one's the last one. Terrapin Lua, which is passion
Okay.
fruit, orange, and guava. This one is an IPA.
Okay.
It has a crazy looking can as
Where's that
well.
brewery out of? That's got to be Hawaii.
You would think it would be, but I have no idea, man. Uh, Pinkerton. You know what Pinkerton is?
I have no idea.
Oh, this says Athens, Georgia.
Hmm.
So that is not near Hawaii.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that.
That's good. It's very different, actually. I I mean, my favorite one so far has to be the Foster's. I don't know if it's because it's the cheapest beer, but it just tastes good. I don't know.
The can looks good.
Have you read a book by Ernest Cline called Armada?
Sounds familiar, but no, I don't think so.
Your book heavily reminded me slightly of that book just because there was this whole academy setting, and then there was also a first contact type of event that came in, so
Okay.
where he also went through simulations. It felt kind of similar to that, but the difference there was that he was doing all this through a screen, like kind of
Okay.
like
Ender's
an
Game.
Ender's Game,
Hmm.
where he's fighting, the bad guys through a screen, and he's taking on the aliens. It's something very similar to that, but more of a training simulation um, in Ender's Game, but a little bit different. And I got vibes of that for sure in the Forsaken Planet. As was just wondering if you read any Ernest Cline before or not. He's the guy that wrote Ready Player One, if you've heard of that
Okay.
one.
Yeah, yeah, I've heard of it. I haven't read it, but I've definitely heard of it.
And that one, Ready Player One, is one of my favorite books just because it feels so like warm and cozy, to where like there's jokes just like in the Forsaken Planet. You can make you laugh, you can make you feel cozy in terms of all the different throwbacks to like the 80s references. Were you
Hmm.
able to see the movie at all that came
Yeah, I
out
did.
by Steven
I love the
Spielberg?
movie. Thought the movie was great.
Yeah, I love the movie too. I know they reworked it a little bit to where it fit a little bit more of like the modern pop culture a little bit compared to the book is heavily in the 80s. The movie, it even had the Master Chief in it, which is a good transition. I know we talked about this a while ago, but Halo.
I've
How is
heard.
Halo involved or inspired in your book at all? Or is it at all?
It absolutely is. I mean, that was like I said. I started writing this. I plotted, a good chunk of it evolved over the years, obviously, but I plotted a good chunk of it back about 20 years ago. This is when I was in high school, and it was back then. Halo was it. Those were the video games to play back then, and so it definitely. I mean, I have the I call it the energy shield or the shield dome that my characters I call it wielding when they're using their power. They wield it around themselves in my book.
Yes.
That was partly inspired by the energy shield on Master Chief when you're playing the Halo games. So yeah, just I remember you know it's tough thinking back 20 years, but I know there was multiple times playing. There were some things when playing Halo 2 that really came back to me on my story. I think even Halo 1, that the scene where they find in the campaign where they find the mic, and that's the first introduction of the Flood, the kind of like virus
Hmm.
beings. Like they watch the Marines go in. That inspired many of my things of kind of you watch events a little bit in my book on like hollows on from other characters. There's the one scene where they're trying to escape the Quinair, the Fortress of Flame, as I call it, and the Colton and company get to watch what happened to these characters as they try to do it. Stuff like that was heavily inspired from that aspect of Halo. So it definitely played an influence on my work.
I'm a huge fan of Halo, so something that reminded me a little bit in terms of in your book was that power dome we were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, I was just picturing the bubble shield from Halo 3 in terms of just throwing down that shield and then stopping all projectiles from coming and hitting whoever
Yeah.
threw down that
Yep.
shield. So
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, like I said, it definitely inspired that kind of protection the characters use in the story. So, and that also, I feel like with the magic system I built with the Energy Force, it made sense to it too. That it would be, it's basically the Force from Star Wars, except everyone has it. So you're as smart with it as you are able to keep focus and use your mind. So it's just what I
and
think would be
it can make
natural.
you live to like 100 years old plus, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's a
well,
huge benefit right there.
yeah. No, they live to. You'll see in the prologue. Peak times they were living almost 300. So.
Dude. Yeah, we need to get some Solara for us now because
Well, the
that'll be
whole
fantastic.
backstory is it's like part of what it's part of truly being human. So when we on Earth can't access it, we don't live as long because it's like we're
Oh,
missing a function of ourselves. So it helps keep
wow.
people healthier.
Now that's very interesting. So, do you still play Halo at all? You playing Halo Infinite, or do you
So
even have time anymore?
I don't have time anymore. So I actually it's been a thing where me and my buddies have been getting together some Friday nights, like once every couple months, and we've been hooking up the old Xbox. And we used to play a game called, this is back when we would like our early 20s. We'd go out to the bar, get drunk, go back to one of our apartments, and we'd play this game called Fusion Frenzy. And
I know
so
that game. Yes.
yes, it's fun as a group setting, just sitting around having a couple of drinks. And we've been getting together recently and playing that game. And one of the times we got together, we tried hooking up Halo to play Halo. And for whatever reason, when we turned the system, we took that disc out. All of a sudden, the disc reader wanted to stop working for Halo, and so we couldn't play. We were so excited. We were going to play. It was Halo 1. What was the map called? We used to love Blood Gulch. We used to play that map all the time. Hang 'em High, I think, might have been the map
that sounds right.
Yeah, I used to love just having the pistol. I mean, I could snipe people with the pistol from like
the pistol was so OP, but it was so much fun.
And pistol was only good in Halo 1. Then they ruined it in Halo 2 and 3. But yeah, so we were pretty upset about that. Hey, what's up, Matt? How you doing?
We got Beard of Darkness here. Welcome, sir. We were just talking about you not too long ago, actually. So welcome. Yeah, Fusion Frenzy was such a fun freaking game, man. Yeah. So yeah, back for me, whenever we had nights like that, we had Super Smash Bros. Nights on the GameCube. You ever play Super Smash Bros?
I did. I used to love that game so much.
Oh man.
We used to, man, I think that came out, I want to say it was either like 8th grade or I was a freshman in high school. And man, we used to just get home from school. We'd go to one of my buddy's house. We'd pop that thing on at 2:30, 3 o'clock. And when I say it'd be 8 o'clock at night, we'd still be playing that thing. And I'd be like, holy crap, it's dark out. What time is it?
Yeah.
That was a great game.
Blood Gulch LAN parties. Oh, yeah. Catch me at Valhalla. Oh, yeah. 1v1 me on Guardian. Let's do that. Halo 3.
Yeah, I for whatever reason, I always liked, the LAN parties that Josh is talking about. We always we'd be in separate rooms. We'd set it up. We played more Halo 1 and Halo 2 in that sense. So you just ran the cord between them. And so you're playing on separate TVs. I never really got so much into I didn't like what they did with Halo 3 and the campaigns. And so don't get me wrong, I played a lot of it, but I liked more just doing the friends group things. And this was before, you could play so much with your friends from your houses. But oh man, I remember one of my buddies, his mom hated us because we would just be we'd be in 2 separate rooms in their house, and we'd always just play rockets. So everyone just had rockets. And one of us would shoot someone with the rocket from like across the way. It'd hit them dead on, but they'd have like a shield or something. They wouldn't die. We'd just be like, I fucking hit you. How are you not dead? Screaming that across the house. One buddy would be like, energy shield. His mom would always come up. I don't care if you yell. Don't cuss.
Oh my God.
Always good times.
Now, my first Xbox did not have a Wi-Fi built into it. So I understand. Connecting the Ethernet cable to each other and playing the game together. Like there was nights where we had TVs on opposite side of the wall where we had a couch in the middle facing each TV. So those nights were just so much fun.
Oh, so, those are like some of my best teenage memories. And that type of stuff is kind of what inspires, the first part of my book of kind of the boys just hanging out and having a good time. That was back when I was doing stuff like that, and we were able to do it much more.
So now we're getting towards the tail end of this. I want to transition real quick to you as a reader. So I know you mentioned you read like maybe one or 2 books a month, right? In terms of 2023, like what were some of your top reads last year?
Oh man, so I getting into this community, I had never read indie books. I'm obviously an indie self-published writer, but once I started getting into the community, once I started really engaging with people and interacting with people, it became my focus to read indie self-published works. And I read a lot of good ones, man. I read Morgan Shank's Low Country, which was just an awesome, fun Wild West ride. Charles Hack, Into the Darkness, was a military sci-fi.
Oh, I have that one.
Opera.
Yeah,
it's a good book. I highly recommend it. I mean, it gives you everything you're going to expect from just kind of that straight military science fiction book. I don't think she's on Twitter, but Amanda Aller, Daughter of the Sun, was a very well-written book. It's more a young adult. It's not normally something I'd go to, but I connected with her. She's an awesome individual. She's like 23,000 Instagram followers or something. And again, was one of the first people that was happy to interact with me and kind of help me. And we talk a lot and bounce questions back and forth and stuff. And then and Sam's book as well was just I started that last year. This is what I mean. Well, first off, it's like 230,000 words, so give me a little bit of a slack here. But yeah, I'll probably finish that one tomorrow, and just absolutely phenomenal read. I can't recommend that enough to anyone who's kind of a fan of that portal fantasy, something like Stargate. I know he likes to comp it to Avatar: The Last Airbender, that type of stuff. So.
No, I'm right there with you, man, in terms of just breaking into indie books. Like same thing for me. Just last year, I just started breaking into so many indie books. It's funny. I just said the word break in. I think it's a good name for the break in the group. But
It's genius. I don't even know who came up to it. Was it Josh or Scott? I'm assuming it was one of them two. But I agree. It's perfect.
So I know, like I mainly started this getting into indie books from actually Ryan Cahill with the Bound and the Broken series, where that's kind of my first indie read ever was his book. And I know that's actually a lot of people's first indie book because he's become just so freaking popular.
Pretty much the face of India these days.
Yes, and it's insane that now since then I've seen such a huge like gathering around indie works in terms of it being supported by so many booktubers. So many people are now saying indie plus, indie, support them, please. And I'm right there with them.
I think people are realizing the old stigma of, if it's indie, it's not good. It's kind of out the window now. There's so many, we just have so many tools now as indie writers. I mean, look at me. I'm not going to sit here and say my book's like the best book in the world, but I didn't take any English lit classes. I didn't do anything in college for writing. I was never part of a writing, a writing group, nothing like that. I kind of, as I told you, I taught myself a lot how to write and how to self edit. And that's all due to the technology out there. I mean, I taught myself everything about self-publishing. I didn't have, when I first published the first book, I wasn't part of the community. I didn't have now what I can go to and the people, the contacts I can now ask and bounce things back and forth with. And maybe it shows a little bit in my first book. I mean, maybe it's not going to be as elegant of writing, maybe as someone who went to college for it, or it's, I guess you'd call it maybe a little rough around the edges, but I'm someone who went to school. I went to college for mathematics. I burnt myself out. So I got into construction, ended up opening my own construction company. And yet here I am still able to publish a book. And I'm not saying that trying to gloat or anything. I just think it's I don't think I would have been able to do this 20 years ago. There's now the tools that we as self-published authors who really put our heart to it and just kind of have the creativity and the mind space to do it. There's the tools there for us to make what's a decent product. I mean, you've read it. I think I think it reads pretty decent, pretty good. But yeah, so I think it's definitely the future. And then there's also the aspect of trad publishing. I think we're starting to see a lot of the issues more going on with that. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, people have been saying trad publishing is going to die for years, and it's not. I don't think it's necessarily going to die, but I do think we're going to start seeing more of an explosion of self-pub.
No, I'm all for it, man. One of the things I saw recently, or actually this has probably been ongoing for a while in terms of even trying to attempt to go down the traditional publishing route, is that it can take a year plus for them to even read your manuscript for them to say no. It's just
that's crazy. I know. Even getting back to you, I mean, I queried very briefly. I realized very quick, not having the background in anything writing related. And then also my first book's 175,000 words. Between those two things, I realized very quickly, I don't think I was going to have a shot with a trad, getting an agent. But even still, when I sent them out, I mean, you're talking months just for agents to get back to you. That's not even, that's just on your query letter. That's not even send them the full manuscript. Now send them the full manuscript. Like you said, could take up to a year. Now that agent needs to go and find a publisher that's willing to take it on. And then who knows in that process, how long the editing process takes, they're going to bounce it to their editors. who are going to come back and say, you have to change this, you have to change that. It's, I can't even think of doing that. Doing this as like a side thing, that's near impossible. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
To be able to put the focus and keep the project going for that long. Yes, mine took me 20 years, but I was able to put it to the side and do it at my own pace, in years long intervals. So.
And now you're pushing the book out almost the next year after you wrote this first one here. So
yeah, it was definitely two very different processes. It was a benefit to me. My business outside of writing has slowed down a little bit. The economy hasn't been great. So I had the time to do that. B, I had no idea what to expect. Not being part of writing communities, I didn't know what to expect when my first book went out there. And then when it went out there, and like I said, it hasn't been all good praise, but when I started getting a lot of the good praise, I started getting people from strangers from across the world reviewing it, saying great things, started getting people contacting me through my website's contact form and being like, I love this. When's book 2 coming out? That just gave me a kick in the rear to really jump on it and say, I'm kind of the person, I feel like a responsibility now to almost get that next book out. I don't feel like I have the luxury anymore to do it at my own pace. And I also have the benefit of I finished the bulk of the first story was finished over 10 years ago. Yes, there's been a lot of editing and stuff and rewrites, but the story has been done for that long. So I've also had 10 years I had a lot of this stuff already, especially book 2, mapped out in my head already outlined, already full in-depth notes made on it. So that really helped me also to just dive in. I see a lot, I'm on like the Page Turners Discord and stuff, and I see a lot of other self-pub authors on there saying that they've struggled a little bit in their second book. They kind of hit walls, and I was just fortunate enough that I didn't have that happen to me. And I think a big part of that was because I've had so long to think about this. I had so much of it already mapped out going into it that it just kind of, this book is 145,000 words. I wrote 120,000 of them in 2 months. So it just flew. It was flying out of me. Like I never would have imagined. I was shocked that it was happening, but it's just how it went. So, and I think it goes to show the process can be very different for everyone. Don't beat yourself up on, if something is taking you too long. I took 20 years to write my first book. So there's going to be ebbs and flows, and things are going to change as it goes along for you.
Well, like Callum is saying right here, you are definitely crushing it right now. So
thank you.
I am looking forward to book number 2, which I'm pretty sure it's coming out in March or April.
April 16th.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I got it done quicker than I got it to ARC readers even quicker than I thought I would. I could have probably had it out in March, yes. But hey, 2 months to market now. That's not a bad thing either. So
I wanted to now move on to the last question here, or really the last segment, in terms of just giving you the floor to basically speak towards anything that you want to anyone who's watching it this far into the stream or the after recording. Once this goes live after we're done here. So you can talk about your book, you can talk about your website, you can talk about book number 2. The floor is really yours, man.
Yeah, I think we covered most of it. I hope people will go and give The Forsaken Planet a shot. I think it's a good book, biasly, obviously, but there's other people who do. Especially if science fantasy is your thing. I think this is a fresh, unique take kind of on that. So I do think there's a chance you'll really enjoy it. And, it's hard to talk about book 2 too much without spoiling anything from book 1, but it's consider science fantasy space opera and now kind of add Mission Impossible, Indiana Jones adventure vibes. And that's kind of what you can expect from book 2. And, and also something I've always been a huge fan of is kind of the ancient past with Earth. And so if you're interested in that, I think you'll kind of be interested in kind of the whole lore and mythology I did, because it kind of gives its own, give my own history for what actually happened way back when during the Ice Age and stuff like that. So yeah, I hope you give the series a shot. Other than that, I'm trying to look into having an audiobook done for the first book, but I'm hitting a wall and a little bit tapped out. So I don't know if that's in the books, but we'll see. I've gotten about one chapter written of a novella that's related to the series. It'll work as a standalone, but it's also kind of, I consider it book 2.5. It will make a lot of sense between books 2 and 3. With that said, though, it's going to take place decades before any of the events of book 1. It's going to introduce a character that's going to become important down the road. It's going to give a backstory. Just as you've read it, I know you know the book, The Planet Uldir in my book. It's going to kind of give the backstory of when the Heart of the Flame kind of took over there. So, and it's also going to introduce another element that is going to become very important in book 3. So, again, will work as a standalone, but is very good kind of read in between book 2 and 3. And I'm hoping to get that one out there this year. It's a novella, so I should be able to. And other than that, it's when I find the time to work on book 3. There's no way I'm pushing it out in less than a year like I did book 2. But I'm hoping sometime in 2025 I can have it out there. We'll see on that, though.
Awesome freaking stuff, man. And I 100% agree with you. I highly recommend everyone to check out Forsaken Planet, and I'm super excited to read book number 2 here pretty soon. And I know you have room there for a blurb there in the back, so leave room for me, man. I'm gonna read that thing. I'm gonna fly through it in March here next month.
ARC readers, I got 2 spots on the back. Who's gonna give me that blurb for it? If there's anyone out there who wants to be an ARC reader, I'm still happy to send. So awesome, you're gonna want to have read book 1 though. That'll be kind of important.
Yeah, I think reading book 1 would be a good idea.
Yep.
There we go. Brian's on that grind. Awesome work, man.
Thank you.
Good stuff. All right, man. I hope you enjoyed your beers, your Miller Lite, and your Yingling there. Hopefully, shoveling the snow, if you have to tomorrow, doesn't take too much time.
Got it all done today.
Oh, there we go. So you're good.
Check my Instagram. I had my little kiddos helping me out. You can look through the video of it.
Child labor. I like it, man.
Got to teach them young.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining in. And I hope you have a good one. Keep reading. Peace, guys.
Later, guys. Thanks for joining.